Hands together. Thanks, guys.
Hey ho. Has everyone had a good week? I had a busy week this week, another busy week coming up. But it was lovely because we've just got back from holiday, so we'd had a good rest, had sort of a couple of weeks in the sun in Florida with the kids. It was great fun. But one of my children this week, Lottie, the little one, she's only 3, just turned 3, said to me and Steph at the dinner table, I think it was yesterday, it might have been the day before, I want to go back on holiday. And Mummy went, me too. And she sent me a message saying, hands up, anyone who wants to go back on holiday. And I sent her a gift back with a hand up, waving like this. Like, I'd love to go back on holiday. And Joel and Ava, my 2 older children, said, oh, can we go back? I'd love a quack. And we just want to, don't worry about all the other little parks we went to. We want to go to the water park just every day at the water park. They love being in the water. They love the waves. And it got me thinking about me when I was younger. Done a lot of swimming, loved surfing and bodyboarding, done a lot of bad surfing and falling off, but loved bodyboarding. And it got me thinking about our choices when we're in the water. The choice we have with waves to go over or under. And some of you in here have never been in the ocean. It's fine. You might be from the Midlands or something. You've never seen the water. That's cool. Others, like me, probably grew up in the water, in the sea. But if you're bodyboarding or surfing, you have the options when you're paddling out to try and catch a wave to come back in. If you're a bad surfer or bodyboarder like me, you have a choice of going over the wave or under the wave. We've done it at the beach this year with Ava and Joel. I was in the water. I was like, what you can do, we can go under the wave if you want, and you don't get knocked back by it at all. Or you can go over the wave, hoping it's the right sort of wave that you can just go over. And so it was funny because in Cornwall, a couple of years, I think it was the year after lockdown, me and Steph went down there for a few days, and I'd done some bodyboarding again, very much out of practice. And I was thinking, do I go over or under this wave? And it worked out wrong a few times. Because you can go under the wave. As a wave's coming at you, you can decide, I'm going to go under it. So you push your board down, you go under, and it's, to be honest, it's not very nice. It's cold, your head goes really cold, like you've had a slush puppy. You get all water in your ears. Some of you can't do this with their lips. I know it's a skill. It's genetic. I can't, it's not a skill of mine. I suppose it's an ability, let's say. It's like a superpower. What it means is I don't have to do the thing that my wife does when she goes swimming, which is hold her nose. I never knew I'd done it until someone took a picture of me underwater once. And I seal off my own nose. It's amazing. It's such a skill. And so some of you would get water up your nose, coming out your ears. Some of you would have it going down the back of your wetsuit. It's not very nice going under. Or you can go over the wave and you just go up and down. But sometimes it knocks you back further and it takes a little bit longer to get out. And so you can go over the wave. But at some point, you might even get out once and then ride a wave back in, but at some point during the day, if you're surfing all day, you'll reach a point where you're coming to the wave just as the wave is breaking. And if you don't know, it's where the wave starts curling up and starts to turn as if it's going to, and that's when you want to catch a wave if you can. But often they're not the waves you want the bigger ones further out. And so you're trying to get past that break. You're trying to get past that wall of water. And the thing is, if you go over waves all the time, at some point, you'll get to the stage where you decide to go over a wave that's coming and curling over you. And what happens is your board's lifted up vertically like this. And then the wave basically punches you in the face with your own surfboard. That's what it does. It just goes bang, and you get pushed back through the air. It's great fun. Broken nose. I recommend it. It's great fun. And so if you do that, if you go over all the time and choose to go over all the time, at some point you will get wiped out. You will get wiped out. And so what I want to talk about over the next 2 weeks, and it does link in, is to chat about this concept of over or under. And what I'm really talking about is authority. I want to talk about authority and in the terms of being over someone in authority or being under someone else's authority. Today we're going to talk about being under someone else's authority. So I'm going to ask you this question. You can be honest. It's quite a quiet room today. Not very many people here, but so more people would notice your hand going up. So the pressure's on. But who has ever had issues with authority? If I could put my other hand up so you could still hear, I'd have 3 hands up. Issues with authority. Some of you are like, no, never, not once. Bless you. you liar. Issues with us. Some of us have more issues than others, depending on our past, depending on our personality, our makeup, maybe our parents, the school we went to, perhaps. But I would say we all have, probably to some degree, at some time. Some of us, to a lot of degree, a lot of the time, because we are human. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because from day one, humanity has kicked back against authority. Someone telling us what to do or what not to do. You know, and there's a classic line, like, because I used to be a teacher in the school that I taught at. It's quite a rough high school in Wisbech. It'd be like, can't tell me what to do. Even that shoulder movement you have to do while you say it. Can't tell me what to do. Bit of a side thing with the head. You can't tell me what to do. I'm like, I can, I'm bigger than you. But the problem is, we all have this in us, and we all sort of show it in different occasions, or maybe we don't show it and it's in us. But the problem is, like an iceberg, there's going to be more people on the planet at any given time who are under authority than those who are over people in authority. It's just the way the system works. It's maths, okay? And so more of your life, you're probably going to be under it and not over it. In more circumstances, you're going to be under it, unless you're like the King of England, but then you're still under authority, you know, unless you're somewhere high up in every echelon, in every part, in every piece of your life from birth, you are like the savior or something. You are under somebody else's authority, and probably more so than not. And so that's a problem, because we all have this problem with authority in us, and yet for most of our life we're going to be under authority at some time, and more of it than not. And the trouble is, I think our culture, perhaps more than in the past, but hey, I wasn't in the past, so I don't know. I think we have an unhealthy relationship with authority. I think it's even sort of pushed on us somewhat, to the point where in schools, nearly all issues, I would say, nearly all, arise because kids do not respect authority in schools. That's coming from an ex-teacher. In the workplace, in my experiences, many issues arise from people not respecting the authority of their boss or even undermining their boss. In churches, the devastation that you see across the centuries when a few dishonor authority. In our homes, children not obeying their parents. I heard it this week on a podcast, that the problem with, it was an American talking, the problem with America today is that the kids rule the home. Like that was his bottom line, is the problem with today is the kids rule the home, children not obeying parents. It's probably I suppose in my household, it's probably the cause of the most sort of frustration and fatigue in me, is that them not operating under authority in the way that I would like them to. Be careful. Yeah. In our culture, I'd say there's more of a mentality of this, is that you need to earn my respect before I give it to you. I think that's quite commonplace now. You need to earn my respect, then I will give it to you. And that seems quite fair, actually, even. It does feel fair. You do it, and then I'll give you it. And you feel that's a good contract, a social contract. But I would argue that I think we should give respect to those in authority because they are in authority. That we should, not when they earn it and show us that they deserve it, but just because they're in authority. And some of you hate that. Some of you are all right with it with some people. But others in your world, you're like, I ain't doing it just because they're in authority. It depends. Well, that's because they're earning it. I think we should give respect to the position, if not the character. And I think this is great in, like, who likes watching police TV shows? I used to years ago when I had more time, but I used to love watching police TV shows. And the difference in the room, you won't know this if you haven't watched British TV, between the English police and the American police, and the way that sort of the baddies, let's call them, the criminals, or the people who seem to be doing something naughty, it's up to the justice system to see if they're criminals in the end, but they are. You can see it's on camera. Is the difference to how they react to policemen. In England, they approach someone, it's like, come on then, you can't do nothing, you can't touch me. In America, usually, I know there's some awful footage and all that stuff, but generally speaking, it's, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And I think the leveler of that is usually because American police are armed. American police their arms. So generally speaking, that interaction, there's a power imbalance. The power, the authority is displayed and said, and what they do, what I would do, I know if I got pulled over in America, I'd be very much less cheeky than if I'm pulled over in England. I can tell you if I'm pulled over by a policeman in England, I'm going to be slightly cheeky. So ever so slightly, just trying to see what I can get away. I'm going to, because that's my character. In the States, I'll be 10 to 2, hands steady, right, comb my hair, like, window down, license up straight away. I'd naturally be like that just because they got a gun on their hip. And it is quite funny, but really, I want you to think about this. Should we only outwardly respect authority because we fear consequences? It's a good idea too, perhaps, do that, but should that be the actual motive, the reason deep down? Or should we do it because it's right? And I want to explore that more today. Because if you are in authority, there'll be people in here who are in authority in many different ways. Whether that's you're a parent of children or you're a boss at work or whatever. But if you are and you're in here and you have some sort of authority over somebody else, you quickly understand, and you know this, that most people would not agree with you most of the time. Like most people, not just some, most people. The thing is, most of them won't tell you either. They'll tell other people. But even our Prime Minister, I think it was earlier this week, maybe Tuesday or something, come out with a statement, because I think it was leaked, about they're going to push back the net zero targets, and for financial reasons trying to do it. But a small group of people, I don't know, let's say 30% of people are like, yes, that's what we need to do. It's the most sensible thing to do to be able to catch up. The target's great, but it's just not going to be achievable, so why chase something that we're not going to do? But the majority of people in the media went, you're a loser, you're stupid, you're bad, I don't agree. And there was just hate, hate, hate. And it doesn't matter what he would have said, it's the same. It doesn't matter what you do in authority. Most people are going to not agree with you most of the time. And I know there are exceptions. But most of the time, the majority of people aren't going to agree with you if you're in authority. So think of that. The same applies to you when you're under authority. When you're under somebody else's authority, you've got to understand that over half the time, you're not going to agree with the people in authority over you. If no one agrees in this situation where you're in authority and people disagree, why do you think that everyone, is it because you're perfect and brilliant? No, it's because we're all different. As someone under authority, we've got to get used to that we're not going to like probably over 50% of the decisions that other people who are in authority over us make, that we don't agree. You see, being under authority is easy when you agree, isn't it? You got a good boss, and they're the same, they're like you, personality gels, they make the decisions you'd make. Following them is well easy. It's so easy. Oh, honour, respect. Love it, that's brilliant, yeah. It becomes more difficult when we don't agree. Maybe with everything they do and the way they display every behaviour. So I want to ask you, what do you do when you don't agree? What do you do when you don't agree? I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it's funny. Because I used to work on a powerboat at Centre Parks between the ages of like 16 and 20 before I got a job as a teacher. I'd do it when I come back from university to earn money. And so I started off as a lifeguard in the pool, and I moved over to water sports as soon as I could so I could be out on the lake teaching sailing, doing powerboat and all these sort of things. Great fun, even in bad weather. I'd rather do that than be in a greenhouse of a swimming pool that would get so hot. Most of you know me, I sweat like it's just ridiculous. You should see me on a poolside when it's like 40 degrees. I'm like a deluge. They don't need slides or wave machines. They just stand around me and ride off my waves. And so I used to work in water sports, and I was a good boy, generally speaking, as a child. I used to do what I was told, but try and get away with what I could. And that's what I was like. But my boss was so easygoing. I won't tell him his name, it was Lee. He was so easygoing, but he was a bit of a rule breaker as well. He was a bit of a rogue, bit of a geezer. And Just to be fair, he was a bit of a muppet. He was, but so am I, and so was I. So it's cool. I can agree. But one day he came in and said, "Phil, you've got to have your name badge on because it comes from the top." I think the park manager at the time was called Johan. He said, "You've got to have your name badge on." You were given one. In fact, I've given you 3, Phil. Can you have your name badge on? They're telling us from the top we've got to have it on. And I'm like, but we've got to put it on a T-shirt, and then we wear waterproof clothes over the top of it. I'm like, what's the point? Makes no sense. We'll take it off, then you put it on your coat. It's like, oh, pierce the waterproof. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. I disagree. Let me out. I want to meet him with Johan, the park manager, who's like 27 pay tiers above me. But I didn't. I just said, yeah, all right, Lee, whatever. Because I didn't respect him. I didn't honour him because he was a bit of a chap. And I was like, you don't follow the rules. I ain't going to follow the rules, especially when I disagree with them. And he asked me 2 or 3 times back to back until one day he said, because he's getting it in the ear from his boss, he said, if you don't come in with a name badge tomorrow, I'm sending you to the pool. And you're going to have to do poolside in the swimming pool, not on the water sports lake. And I was like, all right, yeah, whatever. And the next day I rolled up, and I literally walked in the door, because I did think, because he seemed a bit serious, I was like, I will do it, but I just forgot. And I came in and I went, oh, I'm sorry. And he was like, go to the pool. And he picked the phone up, called the pool manager, sent me over there, and you can imagine, an 8-hour shift in the heat, just me like, grumpy, don't like that, Lee. I was just such an attitude, and I'm hot and sweaty. I had a shift the next morning at water sports. And so I thought, I will obey, I will respect the authority. And so I decided I would wear a name badge. And so I went through all the drawers at home, found my badge. Oh, actually, I found another badge. I had a second one, that's good. And so I had a Phil, and I had a Philip. I found another Phil. I did have 3 badges. So I put 3 badges on, so I'll show him. And then I had an epiphany. It's like my sisters and brothers all used to work at Centre Parks as well. So I went through their drawers, and I got my sister's name, Jules, and I got Emma, and then I found somehow my brother had a Susan. Didn't even know a Susan, so I was like, I'll wear that. Had a trainee badge. Trainee, I'll have that on as well. And then I had, this is bad, my brother, I think, had stolen my manager's badge, Lee's badge. So I then had Lee's water sports manager badge. And then, I don't know how, it must have been a different person, but I had a badge of the park manager's name, which was Johan. I had a badge with Johan on that my brother had stolen from somewhere. So I put that on as well. And so you can imagine me in the next morning, I walked in and I was like, there you go, mate. And I was like, see, I've done badges. I'm a good boy. I'm following all the rules. And I thought, actually, he was going to get angry and send me over to the pool again, but he didn't. He actually, because he was a bit like me, he laughed. And we had a good giggle. And then he said, take them all off. Just wear your badge, please, Phil. And I was like, fair enough. And so I was doing what he asked. I went above and beyond. Someone was like, the extra mile. But it wasn't really submission, was it? You see, I think there's a difference between obedience and submission. There's a difference, and maybe we could play semantics with this, but I want to frame it in a particular way today for us to think about. I was being obedient at the end there. I was doing what I was told in the end, but with a completely wrong attitude. Obeying is just following instructions and doing it, and you can drag your heels. And maybe that's better than not. But submission is more about an attitude of respect and honor and humility. And at the time, what's funny was I was training to be a teacher, to be someone in authority over lots of people. Little people, but they're still sort of people. But I struggled with submission when I was under authority. But if you'd asked me then, and even now, when I'm in a position of authority, I want people to submit to me. Not in an obeying, whipping sort of manner. I want you to be able to do what I ask when I ask, because to make the thing work. And so I wanted other people to submit to my authority, and yet had a problem submitting. I didn't have a problem really obeying, but I did have a problem with submission to authority, with that attitude that should come with it, if we do it the way I believe God's called us to do it. And I think that's true in many areas with many people. What is a reflection of what I was doing is often those in authority in one area struggle to be under authority in another. Especially if you're really high up in one area and you've got lots of authority and you can tell lots of people what to do. Over time, you can become sort of puffed up And then when you're placed in an area where you've not so much authority, you find it hard to be told what to do. And maybe that's different in family than it is in work, than it is in church. Maybe it's different for each of them settings. Like, because it doesn't matter how big or popular, if I was king of the world, I would still submit to my mum. And not just because I'm terrified of her, although I am, but out of a position of love and honour and respect. But in other areas, perhaps I'd struggle, perhaps you do. You see, those with authority issues tend to do two things. When you struggle with an authority, there's two routes that often happen, and there are more, but the first one is that people remove themselves from that area. When you struggle with someone who's in authority above you, you just remove yourself from that area, and you see it all the time. People will change jobs. If you're the personality who struggles with authority all the time, you'll go self-employed, so no one can tell you what to do, or you'll become the CEO of your own company, so you can be the big boss man or the big boss woman. Or you'll start your own sports team, or in the church, you'll go off and start your own church. And the trouble is, even though maybe that's appropriate sometimes, if that's the pattern of your life, that you remove yourself from any authority that you disagree with because you cannot submit, you never really grow. You never grow yourself, you're never sharpened. Because you're trying to put yourself over. Instead of going under the wave that you're supposed to be going under and riding under and submitting under. When it's difficult, instead of that, you're trying to go over the top. You're trying to be an authority over someone who's in authority over you. So you'll remove yourself from it because you've tried, maybe socially, to try and get above them, but you can't. And so you leave because it's too difficult. The second one is to remain under that authority, but you never truly submit. These are people in your workplace who just, they just never submit to them. They're always breaking the rule, never doing anything right. And some of us are a bit like that in some areas at work or with family or in church. And what happens is you might stay in that place, but it usually causes problems for everybody. It causes division. You're constantly undermining the authority that you're under. It's such a pain. Can I tell you, as someone who's been in authority with people under me like that, it is such a pain for everyone. And I've been that, and I've had to be over that. And it's never good for anyone. Because I'd argue, if we're going to live a godly way, and this is hard even for me to say even now, we should submit to all authority. That we should submit to all authority. Teachers, parents, bosses, leaders, sports coach, even though they're a Mickey Mouse authority, they didn't even do anything. They just got there first. Romans 13, 1-2 says this: everyone must submit to governing authorities. For all authorities come from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And check this, and they will be punished. Even in the natural, them systems are set up that if we do rebel against governments and stuff, them systems are in place where you will be punished on earth, let alone in the spiritual sense or the sowing and the reaping sense. If we jump down to verse 5, please, it says this: so you must submit then. Not only to avoid punishment. That is a reason, but not only to avoid punishment, but also to keep a clear conscience. Check this, some of you might not do this. Pay your taxes, too, for the same reason. For government workers need to be paid. They are serving God in what they do. Some of you hate this. Give to everyone what you owe them. And again, pay your taxes and government fees to those who collect them. And give respect and honor to those who are in authority. Notice that. It's not just obey the rules, what you have to do to get by so you don't get punished, but actually give respect and honor to those who are in authority. And maybe we live in a time politically where that's like the opposite of what we do to the other team, or if you're sort of central and you just give hate both ways. I think we live in a culture now where we don't respect and honor people in authority in places or politically or anywhere that we disagree with who's on a different team. We feel like we're justified to not do that now. It's almost like we're cheered on not to do it. I know some of you deep down will be saying, well, should we submit to those who abuse their authority? What about people who abuse their authority? It's completely wrong. Well, You've got to remember, Romans was written at a time where authorities were killing Christians for fun. And they're saying, respect and honour all authority. Peter put it like this in 1 Peter 2, 13 to 15. Check this. For the Lord's sake, submit to all human authority. You see, we do lots of things for God, don't we? And we'll sacrifice and do lots of things, put energy in for God and for building the kingdom. But Peter was saying here, for the Lord's sake, submit to all human authority, even the ones you disagree with, even the ones you don't like. Whether the king as head of state or the officials he's appointed. For the king has sent them to punish those who do wrong and to honour those who do right. Sure, that gets warped and broken, but that is the principle. It is God's will that your honourable lives, I love that your honourable lives should silence those ignorant people who make foolish accusations against you. You jump down to verse 18. It says this, you who are slaves. So even in that culture where there was slaves and it was open and it was talked about, it was dealt with and it was normal. Even Peter would say to you, you who are slaves, and we might disagree with what that is and what that looks like, and even Peter would have, I would argue, but he's saying if you are a slave and you're in that system, submit to your masters. Check it with all respect. You think in any setting that a slave shouldn't have to with respect. You just think, I'll obey you because I'm forced to. But Peter said, even if you're a slave, to submit to your masters with all respect. Do what they tell you, not only if they are kind and reasonable, like your nice boss. Check it, but even if they're cruel. Oh man, this is challenging. So someone who's cruel and obnoxious and horrible and abuses that power, we've still got to respect it. Peter would argue, for God is pleased when, conscious of his will, you patiently endure unjust treatment. Remember, he said this for the Lord's sake. It's like you're sacrificing your being right, your want to get one over on you, but that feeling for God's sake, for building the kingdom perhaps. You see, you're not in control of those who are in authority over you. You know you want to be sometimes. But you are in control of you. I am in control of me. And it doesn't matter if someone in authority over you is unfair or rude or disrespectful. I'm sure I've been them things multiple times because maybe that's my personality makeup. I'm very disagreeable and straight speaking. But you are called to submit to their authority, even if they're them things. But and I want to be clear, does that mean we just turn a blind eye to abuse and things that need to be dealt with? No, I don't think that at all. Is there ever a time that we shouldn't submit to established authority? Yeah, I believe there is. Perhaps there is a time, but I think many of them times are not the times we're talking about here. We can do that when it's directly against the will of God. In Acts, Peter said we must obey God rather than human authority. In Colossians, Paul wrote that Christ is the head over every ruler and authority. So there's times that perhaps that's appropriate. But don't use that as an excuse for all the rest of our behaviours of why we perhaps don't submit. So take that off the table. What is your attitude? What is my attitude towards authority that we just don't agree with or we just don't like? Because we can feel justified. You know, especially if you're intelligent, you can justify anything that you do or anything you feel. We can feel justified to not submit when they're clearly wrong. When all the facts and everyone even agrees with you, we feel justified not to submit. But I want to say this. When you don't submit, it says more about you than it does about them. When you refuse to submit to someone, even if they're wrong, even if you're in the right, even if everyone agrees with you, your whole workplace think they want to take a vote and make you boss. Even in that scenario, and they're clearly wrong, if you don't submit, can I tell you, that shows something about you to people, more than it shows about the person you're trying to get one over on, or be over. Because that person in authority over you, whoever that might be, they're going to get things wrong. They are. Of Quite a lot. Because they're human. So, the spiritual way of probably saying it is, suck it up. I think how you react and how you submit is more important than you being right. And that's really hard for me to say, because I love being right. In fact, Paul calls us to pray for those in authority. You've got to remember that Paul was someone who was under levels of authority in the world who just wanted to kill him and crush him and jail him. His life, I read. I've got some tough things going on in my life quite often, and when I want to feel better, just read about Paul's life. Feel much better. And even then, he's saying we need to pray for those in authority. 1 Timothy 2, 1-2 says this when he wrote his letter to Timothy. I urge you, first of all, to pray for all people. Ask God to help them, intercede on their behalf, and give thanks for them. Pray this way. Check it. So it's not just the people you like, because he then gives a bit more meat on the bones. Pray this way for kings and all who are in authority, so that we can live peaceful and quiet lives marked by godliness and dignity. Paul wasn't saying there isn't a right way to do something or a right way to govern. But what he was saying is when you disagree, you don't just spew hate at that. You pray for those in authority. So if you're struggling with your boss, many people in here will, or that teacher, your young people in the room, if they've got a teacher or a leader or a coach or an MP or a president, first, pray for them. First, pray for them. Not, dear God, please make them see it my way. I'm not praying for them. I was praying for you. Pray for them. I think when we do this, and you know this in your household, just if you've got kids or you grew up with siblings, I think when we do this, when we submit and respect and have honor to those in authority, we know it's better for everyone. It's better for everyone. Hebrews 13:17 says this. Obey your spiritual leaders and do what they say. And this isn't the point of me saying obey a spiritual leader. It's actually what comes after it. It's their work is to watch over your souls, and they are accountable to God. Give them reason to do this, check it, with joy. It's why I'm saying it, because it's personalized to me now. Give them a reason to do this with joy and not with sorrow. I'm being really real with you. And check it, that would certainly not be for your benefit. Doing it with sorrow, making it hard, pushing back, would not be for your benefit. It's saying, and it's talking about spiritual leadership here, but I think you can copy and paste that against every authority. It's like, if you push back in the wrong ways, in the way God doesn't lead you to, because it's not something God's bothered about, it's not against his will, it's just your opinion. If you push back against that, it's not going to be of benefit to you. You want to be the person that your boss likes the most. Even if you push back respectfully and with honor, as long as you submit. You see, when we submit, when we're under authority, it benefits those in authority, but it actually benefits us too, and it benefits everyone around us. But if you cause sorrow and you're hard to lead, it's not of benefit to anyone. It really isn't. And you might get your way for that moment, but it will catch up with you. God made it one of the top 10 in his top 10 list. Top of the pops, top 10, is to honor your father and mother. Honor your father and mother. And some of you sit there and think, that's really difficult to do because my dad is a complete. It says honor your father and mother. And it gives a little promise as well. And things will go well for you and you'll have a long life. It's a commandment with a promise. It's like if you respect and honor that authority. It doesn't even say obey. That's not what it says. It says honor. It says honor your father and mother and things will go well for you and live a long life. But if you refuse to not voluntarily go under that authority and you try and go over it as children, I know my children, they get wiped out like they're going through a wave, and the same with you. If you want to look at it like that, if your children are pushing back against you, then a deluge, a tsunami of you is going to hit them. And to go to your room, rah, and the same with you, with any area of your life. You try and go over that authority and not do it with submit, going under with authority, you're going to get smashed in the face, surfboard in your own face, and flown back in a direction that you don't even want to go in. You'll be wiped out. So my bottom line today is this: those under authority should submit to those in authority. Really simple. Not because of fear of consequence, not to jostle for position, I'm going to submit and see if I can work my way up to the top so I can then be in the top. Not to try and gain influence, but just because it's right. Because God calls us to it. And like I said at the beginning, nearly everyone struggles with authority at some point, in some area or with someone. But if we want to follow God's way, we've got to submit. We must submit. And I want to encourage us all to not just obey, although that's better than not, perhaps, but submit with respect and honor. Especially when you struggle with those who are in authority over you. Especially then. And next week I want to chat about when we have authority over other people. Let's pray. Father, I just thank you.